All right, guys, this here is the Boss Waza tube amp expander. What this unit is a tube amp attenuator and also a solution with a cab IR loader and cab sim kind of deal that also does effects. So what this is intended for is you pair it with your favorite tube head, you're able to crank up your tube head and use it in the studio setting more effectively. So this would control the speaker output and how much of your signal is fed out to speakers while allowing you to record on the back of the unit into your interface. Now, there's some important safety tips, so I think we should go over the back of it. I also would encourage anyone who is either curious about this unit or in other IR loader attenuator products to always read the manual and do the best you can to understand exactly what you're doing when you're setting up the equipment initially so as to not damage anything. The reason I ended up with this unit is because it was given to a friend after a family member of that friend apparently either damaged or blew up one of their favorite amps using this piece incorrectly. I've also heard on forums of others having similar experiences just because it is fairly unintuitive on the back panel and you can be in a hurry. But before all of that, I would say the most important safety tip is once you have everything dialed, have this unit powered on before you turn on your tube amp head. That might not be intuitive to some people, but if this is functioning as your speaker cabinet, it needs to be on before there is power going from this to this. So you need to have this power on this first, then turn off on the amp. When you're ready to power down, power off the amp, off the unit. Let's flip it around to the back and see what's going on there. All right, so what you're seeing here is the back panel of the Boss Waza tube amp expander. Now what's really important is this section right here where it says from tube amp. So this is what's interfacing with the tube head that you're plugging into it. Now, right here we have an ohm setting. So whatever output on the back of your head you are sending from, whether it be an 8 ohm load, a 16 ohm load, or 4 ohm load, if it has a small switch or if it's dedicated jacks, make sure you're using the correct output that matches what this says. And it plugs into this cable here. In my case, this speaker cable here is coming from my Marshall Origin head. So that is now interfacing. Just remember that power cycling. But what's really not intuitive, and I believe this is what caused the issue here, is the input level setting. So you have three settings here: 10 watt, 50 watt, and 100 watt. Now the manual kind of explains this, but having experienced it, what it really wants you to do is set it to the higher value that's closest to what your amp is. So my amp is a 20 watt amp. I put it to the 50 watt input level and it handled it a lot better than if I had put it on the 10 watt setting, which I didn't even want to try because I knew right off the bat I'm going to be cranking my 20 watt amp and it is distorting and putting out much more output than 50 watt. So important to note, if you are using a 50 watt amp, you may even want to bump this up to 100 watt if you're really cranking it hard. This is not the desired wattage of the included power amp. It's just important to realize what this is telling you. This is you most closely matching your amp to the input level that it's going to receive. Definitely not intuitive. When I got this in, it was set to 10 watt, and my guess is that family member probably had it set to the wrong setting and it didn't handle the input well from the output of the tube amp. See this over here that says to speaker? What's unique about this unit is that it brings the tube amp head down to line level instead of full tube output, and it has a separate solid state power amp. The good news about this is that it is fairly safe to plug in whatever you want here, so long as it's not more than two 8 ohm cabs, because it's a 4 ohm load. So you could plug in one 4 ohm cab. Anyway, it's good to read manuals and understand what you're doing, especially when working with a high-end unit like this. Also, I heard a story on a forum. Someone plugged their tube amp into the phone's input and damaged their Waza unit. Easy to do. They're very close to each other. If you weren't careful, it'd be easy to make that mistake. Make sure you're plugging in and checking everything super carefully on these units. So far, I've had really good success and haven't felt like I was doing anything unsafe. This output is going to my 412 cab that's running at 16 ohm. Totally safe to use on its own. Sounds great. I will say this unit does color the sound a lot because it is taking that tube level, speaker level sound down to line level and then amplifying it through a separate solid state power amp. It sounds very different than other units. So I hope this intro safety tutorial was helpful for you. It's important to understand what you're buying, to carefully go over it, especially if it involves plugging a tube amp and running either as its own speaker source or if you're attenuating the actual speaker output level of a tube amp. It's really important to understand what you're doing, do it safely, read the manual. Thank you.